I heard it from my own daughter-in-law at my grandson's birthday party. Once we sell this piece of land, we'll move out. He probably won't live much longer anyway. I was standing outside the door, still holding the gift box. No one knew I heard everything. That day I realized it wasn't the land being sold. It was trust. If you've ever lost everything because of the people you love, stay here. Subscribe, and tell me where you're listening from in the comments. I'll tell you my story. I walked into the house I once built with my own hands. The place that used to echo with my wife's laughter and smell like apple pie every Sunday. Now the voices in the living room were only about selling land, moving away, and bank names I'd never even heard before. No one looked at me. Not a single one. Michael, my son, was laughing loudly with his friend's wine glass in hand, acting like the host of the house. Emily, my daughter-in-law, glanced at me once. Her smile was thin as paper. "Dad, you came, I thought you'd stopped leaving the ranch," she said, her voice light, but cold. I just nodded, set the gift box on the table. "For my granddaughter," I said. No one asked. No one told my grandson to come greet his grandpa. I sat in the corner where the light didn't reach, listening to them talk about selling before winter and great price the highways coming through soon. I understood. After a lifetime as an engineer, then a farmer, I knew exactly how much Montana soil was worth when people started pouring concrete over nature. But I never thought it would be my own son doing the calculations, while I was still alive. I remembered when Michael was little, running barefoot through the fields, shouting with joy as I taught him how to plant a windstake. He used to say, "Someday I'll keep this farm so Grandma never has to worry about food." Now he's selling it off acre by acre to invest in the kids' future. I just don't know if that future will have any land left to call home. Laughter filled the room when Emily talked about Seattle, a city of glass towers and fancy coffee. No one to take care of, no snow to shovel, no smell of hay in the house. Everyone laughed, even Michael. That laugh, it was light-free and foreign. A laugh I'd never heard from him when he lived here. I didn't say a word. I stood up quietly and stepped out onto the back porch. The Montana wind cut through my skin, carrying the scent of coming snow. At the end of the field, the old wooden barn I built still stood, tilted, weathered, but steady, like me. Through the glass I saw them still eating, talking, not noticing the oldest man in the room had slipped out of the picture. I sat on the steps and pulled a birthday card from my pocket. It was for my granddaughter Lily. I was going to write, "Grow up to be someone who keeps her word." Instead, I tore the card in half. That night I drove back to the ranch in silence. The road was empty, snowflakes drifting through the headlights. On the radio they warned about a new cold front, one that might freeze the whole northern state. I turned the volume down, listening to an old song Grace, my wife, used to love, "Take It Easy." The line, "Don't let the sound of your own wheels drive you crazy," hit different that night. Not because I was sad, but because I realized I'd let someone else's wheels steer my life for too long. When I got home, I saw the barn door had a new lock, shiny, not mine. I didn't say anything. I just looked. That barn held everything: land deeds, maps, tax papers, even the will I'd written by hand 10 years ago. I tried my old key. It didn't fit. I went back inside and lit the fireplace. The ashes in the grate still smelled of burnt paper. I brushed them gently and saw bits of printed words, "Notarized property transfer." I understood. No one had to say a word. I sat at the dining table staring at a house that now held only one person. Everything I'd kept all my life, the engineering trophies, Grace's photo in the silver frame, Michael's college letters, was still there. But the room felt hollow, like something invisible had been taken. Something bigger than money or land. Trust. I made coffee, the only thing that could still steady my hands. When the little machine clicked, I whispered, "If Grace were here, she'd know what to do." But I knew. This was my fight now. I took my old notebook from the drawer and wrote one line, October 6th. "They've started selling, but they forgot. This land still has its keeper." Then I closed the notebook, set it beside my car keys. Tomorrow morning I'd go see the only person I still trust, Linda Cole. And I swore, this time I wouldn't stay silent. I shook my head. No. I just want to know what's left. She opened her laptop, typing fast. You still own 60 acres under your name. The other 120 have been transferred to High Ridge Development. But the payment isn't complete yet, it's just a deposit. You still have the right to intervene, if you move quickly. How long do I have, I asked. 3 days before they finalize the notarization. 3 days. It sounded like a joke, but I'd been a test flight engineer making life or death calls in minutes. 3 days. That's plenty to change a life. I left the office as the snow began to melt. On my way home, I stopped by the bank. The young teller greeted me with a polite smile. Mr. Grayson, we received a withdrawal request for $240,000 from your account last week. Would you like to confirm it? I froze. Who sent that request? The authorized person, Michael Grayson. My throat went dry. It felt like every cell in my body tightened. I want all access revoked. Today. She hesitated, then nodded. Yes, sir. But, are you sure? I've never been more sure in my life. As I walked out with the receipt, I saw a little boy outside playing with his mother. He held a paper airplane running through the snow, shouting, "I can fly." I remembered Michael at 8, running around the yard, yelling those same words. That memory almost broke me. But then I heard Grace's voice in my head. When they forget where they come from, someone has to remind them. That night I went back to the ranch. Under the dim yellow light, the house felt wider than ever. I opened a drawer and pulled out an old notebook. On the first page I scribbled, "List of what still belongs to me." Then I wrote, 60 acres of land, a name still on the papers, and a will no one can sign for me. I spent the whole night going through tax files, old certificates, and leftover contracts. Near dawn I found something. The remaining land was the flat stretch near the creek where Grace once planted sunflowers. Turns out for 5 years I'd been paying taxes on that land without knowing it had been split off. I watched the sunrise through the window, the smell of coffee warm, but bitter. I thought of Michael, of Emily, of their smiles as they talked about selling the land. I once taught my son how to calculate lift, told him everything has a balance point. Tilt it by even 1 degree and it all falls. Now I know. Families are the same. Once trust tilts, nothing can hold it up. Around 9, the phone rang. It was Michael. "Hey, Dad, I'm about to sign the final contract. Can you come into town this afternoon? I just need your signature to speed things up." I paused for a long time, then said, "This afternoon? Sure. I'll be there. But this time, son, you'll hear me sign something else." I hung up and looked out at the white fields. In my mind, I wasn't the betrayed old father anymore. I was an engineer back in the cockpit, and this time, no one else was taking the controls. 3 days, just 3, but enough to reclaim not the land, but the right to stand tall on it. That afternoon, I came back to town right on time. The air was so cold, every breath turned to smoke. Michael and Emily were already at the cafe across from the notary office, dressed sharp cappuccinos in hand, like this was just another business deal, not the sale of half their father's life. "Dad, you made it," Michael said, voice light but stiff. "The buyer just needs your signature to complete the file. I've handled everything else. You just sign and relax. I'll take care of the rest." I pulled out a chair, sat down slowly, and once I signed who owns the ranch, Emily stepped in. High Ridge Development. "But don't worry, Dad. They're giving us a generous payout. We're setting up an apartment for you in Seattle, facing the ocean. Much quieter than this snowy place." I looked at them, saw the confidence in their eyes the kind people have when they think they're doing the right thing. I smiled faintly. "So all I need to do is sign yes," Michael said. "Once you sign, it's all done." I stayed silent for a few seconds, then placed another stack of papers on the table. "Before I sign yours, I want you to sign this." Michael picked it up, scanned it quickly. His face went pale. "What is this?" "A revocation of authorization," I said. "Starting today, every legal right related to my property is withdrawn. I filed it with the court this morning." Emily leaned forward. "What does that even mean?" Your son's just trying to help you. I looked at her calmly. Help me, by turning his mother's land into a concrete dump. The air went heavy. Michael looked down, fists tightening. Dad, I just thought this was an opportunity. I didn't mean any harm. An opportunity. I gave a rough laugh. Opportunities are made, not stolen. I stood up. My voice was steady. I'm not signing anything. And if you try to use my name again, remember every account, every access, I've already revoked it. Starting today, you no longer represent me. I walked out, leaving them in silence. Snow began to fall again as I drove home. I didn't feel sad, just lighter. Each snowflake hitting the windshield felt like a reminder. Sometimes silence is how you take your voice back. That night I met Linda. She greeted me with that knowing look. Did you tell them I did? And now I'm ready for the rest. She nodded, opened her laptop. I've prepared the documents for the Grace Foundation, the scholarship fund, in your wife's name. If we sign tonight, we can complete the transfer within 48 hours. I looked at the contract. Transfer everything in my account, about $180,000 into it, along with the remaining 60 acres. Linda looked surprised. Are you sure that's everything you have left? I have nothing worth keeping, only something worth giving. She was quiet for a moment, then signed as witness. When my pen touched the paper, I felt something strange. Not regret, but release. Then I pulled a small USB from my pocket. One more thing. I recorded this morning's call. They asked me to sign fake documents. If there's ever a dispute, keep it as evidence. Linda took it, nodded softly. You're smarter than they think. I smiled. Not smarter. Just finally learned how to stand up. That night I got home late. In the old kitchen I made coffee and looked out the window. Outside, the wind moved through the bare trees, whispering like Grace's voice from long ago. I could see it all the day we bought this land, two people with nothing but faith. And now, more than 40 years later, I was back at that same place, nothing left but faith. This time, faith in myself. I opened my notebook and wrote beneath yesterday's line, day 2. I no longer wait for anyone to keep their word. For the first time, I signed my own. As I closed it, I checked the clock. 2 days left before their notarization deadline. 2 days, to remind them that some things can be sold and some things never have a price. The next morning, the phone rang early. I knew Lily's voice right away, the shaky inhale before she spoke. Grandpa, Mom and Dad are really mad. They said you did something at the courthouse, and they told me I can't come to the ranch anymore. I was quiet for a few seconds, then asked softly, Where are you now? I snuck out. I'm standing at the gate. I went to open the door. There she was, 17, backpack on her shoulder, cheeks red from the cold. She didn't look like anyone else in that family, not her mother's polished kind, not her father's practical kind. When she saw me, she just broke down crying like winter itself had melted all at once. Grandpa, they're going to tear all this down to build a resort. I heard Dad talking to the company. I'm scared. I put my hand on her shoulder. Don't be. The ranch doesn't belong to them anymore. I've done what needed to be done. She looked up, eyes wide. What did you do? I smiled. I didn't sell the land. I gave it away to people who need it to live, not to destroy. She stared at me confused, then smiled faintly. Grandma Grace would be proud. My throat burned. I hope so. We spent the whole morning in the kitchen. I made her hot cocoa and told her everything the power of attorney, the canceled will, the foundation I set up in her grandmother's name. Lily listened quietly, holding my hand now and then, not saying a word. By afternoon, I heard the sound of a car outside the gate. I knew who it was before I even looked. Michael walked in, coat unbuttoned, face red with anger. Emily followed, lips pressed tight. Dad, what the hell is this? Michael threw a stack of papers on the table. I just got a notice you revoked my authorization and transferred all the remaining land to some charity. What are you doing? I met his eyes. I'm keeping a promise to your mother that this land will feed people, not swallow them." Emily snapped. "Do you even realize what you're doing? You're tearing this family apart." I stayed calm. "No. I'm cleaning out what's been rotting it." Michael clenched his fists, his voice shaking. "Dad, everything I've done was for the future for Lily. You think she wants to live in this dead field?" Lily jumped up, shouting, "I do. This is the only place that's real." The room went silent. Emily turned to her daughter, eyes cold. "Lily, you don't understand. Get in the car. Now." But she didn't move. She just stepped closer to me, holding my hand tight. "I'm staying." I squeezed her hand, then looked at Michael. "Son, you remember when I taught you how to measure wind force? When the wind pushes against you, you don't fight it head on. You land soft. Maybe it's time you landed." Michael lowered his head, lips trembling, but said nothing. Emily grabbed his arm, trying to pull him toward the door, but he didn't move. Finally, she stormed out alone. Michael stayed behind, voice rough. "Dad, I'm sorry. I thought if I had money I could make things easier. But now I don't even know what I've lost. Until I saw this place empty." I said quietly, "You haven't lost everything. As long as you can say you're sorry, you still have a way back." Night fell. Snow thickened outside. Lily and I stood by the window, watching Emily's car lights fade into the dark. She asked, "What will you do now, Grandpa?" I looked out at the fields, the trees standing strong in the wind. "Tomorrow I'll plant your grandma's sunflowers again, and you'll help me." "Right?" Lily nodded. "I promise." That night I sat alone in my study. The yellow lamplight glowed over the confirmation papers for transferring everything to the Grace Foundation. I signed one more copy, not because I had to, but because I wanted to etch it into my soul, that I'd done the right thing. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, sounding like a whisper. "Good job, Walter." Maybe it was my imagination, but for the first time in years I believed that voice was smiling. The next morning I woke earlier than usual. Winter sunlight slipped through the curtains, glinting off Grace's old photo on the desk. She was still smiling, gentle calm, as if she'd never left. I placed my hand on the glass and whispered, "It's done, Grace. They can't touch this place anymore." Outside, Lily was shoveling snow on the porch, her blonde hair messy in the wind. When she saw me, she waved and smiled, bright, carefree, like nothing had happened last night. I made 2 mugs of hot cocoa and brought them out. She said, "Grandpa, let's plant the sunflowers today. Mom's not coming back." I looked at her and nodded. "Good. This land belongs to the light now, not the shadows." We went out to the field together. The melting snow revealed soft brown earth where Grace once planted her first seeds. Lily scooped handfuls of soil with her small hands, while I dug slow, steady trenches. We didn't talk much. Sometimes we just smiled when a lonely sparrow flew by. For the first time in years, I didn't feel alone. That afternoon, a truck stopped at the gate. I thought it was from the development company, but no, it was a lumber truck from High Ridge Construction. The driver handed me an envelope. "Mr. Grayson," he said, "they canceled the contract. The project's been suspended due to internal disputes. Someone sent you the refund from the deposit, about $120,000. I opened the envelope, read the papers, then smiled. I didn't need that money anymore. "Send it back," I told him. "It doesn't belong to me." He blinked. "You sure, sir?" I looked out at the golden field, slowly coming back to life. "I'm sure. Some things can't be priced." That night, I wrote to Linda thanking her for finishing the paperwork for the Grace Foundation. Within a week, this land would become a vocational training center for orphans and laid-off workers in Montana. The old barn would be turned into classrooms, and the main house would stay, just as it was a home for the first students to arrive. I didn't know how many would come, but even if one person learned the value of the soil, that would be enough. A few days later, the postman brought a brown envelope with familiar handwriting. Michael's. Inside was a short letter ink blurred by Water Dad. It took me a long time to understand. "I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a visit once, if you'll let me. Lily told me everything. I'm proud of you. I'm learning how to live again. Your son, Michael. I read it over and over, then placed it beside Grace's photo. I didn't write back. Not out of anger, but because I knew some apologies need time, not words. At dusk, Lily brought me a drawing she'd made. An old man with silver hair, sitting in a sunflower field, with the faint shadow of a smiling woman behind him. Under it, she'd written, "For you and Grandma, because you never gave up." I squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Lily. I don't need anything else." That night, we lit a fire on the porch and baked apple pies, Grace's favorite autumn treat. The scent drifted across the fields, mixing with Lily's laughter. I watched the flames dance, listened to the wood crackle, and thought peace doesn't come after victory. It comes when you stop being afraid to lose. Before bed, I wrote the last line in my journal. Day 3, I kept the land not to prove anything, but to see what could grow again from the ashes. The next morning, the sun rose over the mountains, light spilling across the fresh rows of earth. In the middle of it, the first seed had sprouted small but strong. I stood there, coffee in hand, and whispered to the sky, to everything they ask why I'm still alive. Now I know. To see this grow again, and I smiled. Not the smile of a man who won, but of one who finally found his way home. I look out at the field in front of the house, the first sunflower sprouts pushing through the snow and ice. Maybe life's the same way. You just need the courage to start over once, and spring will find its way back on its own. If you've ever lost everything but still want to rise again, subscribe to this channel. I've got more stories to share. And you? What about you? If the person you loved most betrayed you, would you forgive or walk away? Tell me in the comments below. Thank you for listening.